Hi there, I'm Woody Wormhead and welcome to my channel. In today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how to do the crochet cast on. The crochet cast on family is another one of my favorite cast on families. It's another very versatile method and there's lots of things that you can do with it. Now, you may have seen my tutorial that I have on the crochet provisional cast on. If you haven't, I'll link to it. You can go and watch it. It's a useful tutorial for creating temporary stitches that you then go off and graft or work in different directions with, whatever. Today, what I'm going to show you is very much the same, or at least the mechanism of creating the cast on is the same, except we do it in our main yarn. We're not creating temporary stitches, we're creating a permanent cast on. I'm going to show you how to do it, and I'm going to show you the very subtle differences between the temporary version and the permanent version. Okay, and then we're going to build on that and show you some of the things that you can actually do with it and why I like it so much. So let me grab my yarn and my needles and I'll show you how to do it. Okay, then I have here a DK weight yarn in variegated greens here, greens and pale pinks. We have one of my beloved carbons, a DPN that we're going to crochet our stitches onto, and we have a crochet hook. Now, from the other tutorial about the crochet provisional cast on, you may remember that you need to have a slightly larger crochet hook to help those stitches when you want to release them from your provisional cast on. In this, even though we're working a permanent cast on, a slightly larger crochet hook will help give a neater edge along the bottom. You don't have to, but I think it gives it more give because a cast on edge that has some give to it is very useful. So I go with a slightly larger size. I've got 3.75 here, 3.25 millimeter here for the DPN and a 4mm crochet hook. Now the mechanism for getting this started is exactly the same as the provisional one, except we're using our permanent yarn or our main yarn. All right, so I'm going to wrap my yarn around the hook and hold it. I don't like putting a slip knot here at the beginning. I do recommend it if you're trying these methods for the first time, but as I've talked about this before, I don't like it because it leaves a little lump there, which can be unsightly, and it actually makes neatening up your work and finishing a little bit kind of more difficult. When you wrap your yarn, let me do that again. When you wrap your yarn around your hook or needle, you get a neater finish because that can be woven in much more neatly and invisibly. Okay. The only difference being is that a slip knot does help anchor it because you can tighten it up. So you have to be extra careful to hold the yarn tail down the side to make sure that it doesn't all move around. And the first couple are slippy, just like the provisional cast on, the first couple are slippy. So we have our main yarn. Let's get these up together. We are going to crochet this directly around the needle. So the yarn always goes behind the needle as we are preparing to crochet the first stitch. You bring the yarn hook, over the top of the needle to grab the yarn, and then you pull it through. This bit is a little bit fiddly to start with. The first couple of stitches can be loose and like to wiggle around a little bit. Now, don't be afraid for this one to pull it tight on the needle. We're not worrying about trying to remove these later like you would do in a provisional cast on. So as long as you've got a large hook, that's going to be fine. You want it nice and tight on here. You want this as a standard gauge or tension that you would normally have for the rest of your knitting. So yarn behind the needle, hook across the front, put it through, yarn across, take it up between the two, hook across the front, pull it through, yarn to the back between the two, hook across the front, pull it through. So let me do a few more of those because I want to show you what happens when we get to the end. Okay, I have now cast on a number of these stitches. Look at that lovely chain across the bottom there. Isn't that lovely? Now, what you want to do when you are working the crochet cast on, you cast on one stitch less than required. So, I mean, if your instructions are actually written for a crochet cast on, they might have this written into the pattern. But if it doesn't, cast on one stitch less. Why? Because this stitch that's still on the hook that we pull out and lengthen when it's a provisional cast on, we don't want to do that, not this time. What we do with that is we literally just pop it onto the end, and that becomes our last stitch. So cast on one less than required, and then use the stitch that's left on your hook as your last stitch and put it back onto the needle, and you get this beautiful, beautiful edge. I love it. Now, where might you use this? Let's have a look at some examples. I have a little pile of knitted goodness here. Now let's have a look at the first one. This is a swatch from my Short-Row Colourwork book. This is a motif that's worked this way. All of the swatches, I worked with a slip stitch selvage. I have a separate tutorial for that. And I did a crochet cast on at the beginning. And then I did a standard cast off or bind off at the end. And this is one of the reasons why I like this as a permanent cast on, because look, they perfectly mirror each other. If you have ever got a piece of knitting that has got some kind of mirroring, or you want the edges to match, a crochet cast on is it perfectly mirrors, the standard bind off. It also plays really nicely with a slip stitch selvage, because look at that, you can keep the line of V's going all the way around. That's the crochet cast on, that's the slip stitch selvage. It continues all the way around and you keep that nice line. Look at that, it's beautiful. This is one of the hats from my cuboidal collection. This involves working with mitre squares, where I have written the instructions that you always crochet cast on, do a standard bind off, and do slip stitch selvages, because it makes it easier to pick up the stitches along the edge when you are working them and joining your mitre squares together. But look at the way that edge is there. That is one of those that has been combined here, that has got a cast on, a slip stitch selvage, and a bind off all together around here. Now that's the bind off, that's the slip stitch selvage, and there's a cast on edge, and they all work together because they all create those lovely lines of V's. And this hat here, I've actually just forgotten what it's called. I'll have to remember and then link it in the tutorial below. I've published so many hat patterns that it is embarrassingly the situation that I quite commonly forget what they're called. This is yes, Willie, yeah, you did just say that on camera, that you forget some of the names of your hats. Yep, okay. This is a garter stitch brim on the hat that has a crochet cast on edge, and this time the slip stitch columns come up into the brim. So on the other swatches you had slipped stitch selvages that kind of like run around and border between them. Here, these are slip stitches that are worked into the garter stitch, but they come out of this crochet cast on and they keep that nice pattern kind of continuous. So one of the things that I really like about this cast on is because it creates those V's. They're pretty, but it means that we can match them to our bind off, match them to slip stitches. We can finish off and add some of those nice refining touches that we want to add to our knits. Well, I hope that's been helpful in showing you how to do the standard crochet cast on and what its benefits might be. How it looks really pretty against garter stitch. It's no secret that I'm a fan of garter stitch. How it plays nicely with the slip stitch selvage, and how it mirrors a standard bind off. So it allows you to have uniform edges that match all the way around. Even if you're only using the crochet cast on the standard bind off, you've got those mirrored edges. They look really nice. It's one of those kind of like details that really add extra refinement to your knitting. And it's not that dissimilar to the crochet provisional cast on, except you do it in your main yarn. It becomes a permanent cast on. You cast on one stitch less, and that stitch that's left on your hook gets popped onto your needle, and then you've got your cast on ready. They are part of the same crochet, they are part of the same cast on family. The crochet cast on family is one of my favorites, along with the alternate cable cast on family. They are versatile. They're not just pretty. There are lots of things that you can do with them. And I like versatile cast-ons that you can do in different situations and you can change things up and switch things up. I have more tutorials planned to show you. So they will be coming in the near future. If you could do the like, subscribe, and share thing, I would very much appreciate it because I'm trying to grow my channel and get my techniques out to more knitters so I can share these skills and tips and tricks that I've spent years learning and working out. All right. Until next time, take care out there. Look after yourselves.